I'm still mad about it.
I'm gonna have to get too full this week.
Oh, man. We're wonderful.
See how many, as the chair of this meeting today, you should see how many times you can say, this stuff is really.
I think to the point where no oxygen is good. You good? All right. I don't know who's running. Oh, where are you on? Okay, thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday, February 6th, 2025 meeting of the City Council Business and Community Affairs Committee. Today we have two items on the agenda. The first being a continued discussion regarding creation of a tax increment finance master plan to include a TIF for South Norman. And with us today, we have the esteemed Catherine Walker. I believe you have a presentation for us?
I do.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over
It's
to you.
on this screen, but not on this one. I don't know. You guys on this, because I've already got that put on here.
They didn't teach all that in law school?
Well, I mean, you guys got fancy after I left, so there's so many people who are,
Couldn't just change the password, had to do all the everything.
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm doing.
There we go.
You're doing a great job with it, Laura.
Killing it.
Mhm.
Maybe this is.
Oh, now that one's showing.
We can do it.
Okay, now we got it.
I'll be here all week.
Other duties as assigned. Okay, so last month, we discussed the Griffin TIF, and I know you guys have a presentation coming up, I believe from RDG with an update on that master plan for the Griffin area. And so we talked about coming back in March to Baca to talk more about Griffin and to spend this meeting talking about a possible South Norman TIF. So that's what I've got prepared for you. We talked about it last fall sometime, maybe October, November. And I had a large project area drawn that really focused on Lindsay and 12th and went down to capture the perfect swing location. And at that meeting, we talked about other development that you all were in the process of reviewing and voting on, I think on the December 10th meeting. So it was coming up at that time. And so I went back and looked at those PUDs that you've approved since the last meeting and revised the project area to pull it a little further south to capture some of the development with the Armstrong Bank PUD and then with the Farzani property further west to Jenkins. And I'll go through all of this in just a second. As we move through this, just like we did with Griffin, we can have a really broad project area that allows us to spend TIF dollars in a broad area of town, but our increment districts will want to be targeted so that we're not siphoning off revenue from existing property and just trying to capture new development as much as possible. So you'll recall when we first started talking about all of these potential TIFs that we really focused on enterprise zones because that's a pretty easy box to check under the Local Development Act. If it's in an enterprise zone, it qualifies for a TIF tax increment financing under the Local Development Act. So I pulled the enterprise zones for this south area of Norman. And you can do this on the Department of Commerce website. I'm disappointed that it's as blurry as it is, but
Oh, thank goodness, I thought that was me.
yeah, most of the time it's my eyes, but this time no. So you can see these are the existing enterprise zones that are designated for 2025. Here are the grandfathered enterprise zones. So those remain in effect and have been in effect for a long time. Captures a lot of this area. And then we have priority enterprise zones, which just qualify those areas for some additional possible incentives from the Department of Commerce.
That southern boundary is Post Oak. I can't read it. I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it goes all the way down to Post Oak. And for most of these, I started at Alameda because that's where we ended with Griffin. And then this is all of those together. So you can see a large portion of South Central Norman is part of an enterprise zone, whether it's grandfathered or the 2025 2025 designation or a priority designation. So this is what we had drawn the last time we talked about this. Obviously, at that time, I think we were thinking in this area, we've got a lot of residential coming on the south end, but we've also got a huge redevelopment site, or a site with at least potential for redevelopment in Perfect Swing. And so we were trying to capture all of that and also capture some of the retail areas that are a little depressed, a little struggling around Lindsay and 12th and in that area. So now we've got a really fun drawing of a project area. Trying to skip on this sort of northwest area right outside the boundary, that is not in an enterprise zone. So that's why you kind of have that funky little line there. And then just trying to capture the property that's not OU, that kind of pulls in a lot of these new developments we know are coming. It pulls in the Saxon Industrial Park, in case you guys wanted to consider job creation type assistance in that area. And so we've drawn it broad but targeted for those developments that we know are coming. And quite frankly, there's a lot of vacant property in this area that could be developed. This is what the land use plan shows it as. You know, there is a lot of residential, and so as we draw increment districts, we want to make sure we exclude the existing residential as much as possible and capture, you know, commercial areas to the maximum extent we can. And then this is the zoning, current zoning. I think down on the Farzani property, it still shows it as I-1, but as you all know, you approved a PUD with a mix of uses just last December. So this is just my rough calculation, not exact by any means, but just kind of going through the GIS maps and trying to pick out parcels that were vacant, figure out what they're zoned, and look at those as potential future development over the length of a 25-year TIF. You've got in this area more than 100 acres that are zoned R1, straight R1. You've got more than 10 acres zoned RM6, more than 35 acres zoned commercial, and then a lot of acreage zoned PUD, which includes a mix of all these other uses. You've also got this, and that's just vacant property. You've got the Perfect Swing site as well, which is your largest redevelopment potential in this district, 29 acres zoned C2.
Was the Farzani's PUD included in that 220?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this is that PUD, Sooner Village. And again, it's a little, oh, it looks better on the big screen than it does on my screen. They've got a mix of uses, you know, duplex type units, commercial property, mixed use, office, warehouse, light industrial, medium density, 135 dwelling units in development area 4. So there is a lot going on right here with a lot of potential for increment generation as that develops.
Catherine, what are the cross streets there closest to?
Jenkins, or Cedar Lane is on the south and Jenkins is on
Got it.
the west. And yeah, you see that on the south end? This is right off Highway 9. Jenkins. The next one, and these are just me pulling the two biggest ones that you recently approved, because this is really the reason why we went back to the drawing board on the boundaries. We knew these were coming. The Armstrong Bank PUD, which is significant commercial, retail type uses. It also has some office and support services. So that has a lot of potential too, both as a property tax generator, but a sales tax generator also. In terms of what's going to be filling those, especially those large boxes. That would be retail. So as we go forward, things to think about, public improvements. We've talked about streetscapes, streetlights, those kind of things. I remember an expensive bridge connecting 12th, or connecting Cedar Lane to Jenkins rather, and so that might be a potential project that could be at least partially funded with TIF revenue. You might want to be able to provide development assistance to the Perfect Swing site to help encourage that to redevelop. Maybe there are employment assistance opportunities for job creation with Hitachi. They've got a lot of vacant land with Saxon Business Park. A lot of opportunities there in terms of bringing jobs and spurring that kind of development. Just something to remember, little to no TIF funding would be available until we've got identified projects. And once they're constructed, they come online and start generating that revenue. So this is just capturing new revenue, which is great because you aren't losing existing revenue. But you have to wait till things get built. And as we've seen in Center Cities, that can take some time. And then there's usually a lag with the tax collection before you start seeing that revenue. But it is important to adopt the TIF before these known large projects get going to capture the increment. So if that's something council wants to do, we need to keep those timelines in mind. So we make sure we capture the increment for these bigger projects. And then I've said this already, but careful drawing of those district boundaries. It's going to be really important to make sure we're not siphoning off existing revenue for property tax or sales tax, that we're really capturing new development. Because even though you're just getting that new revenue generated, you don't want to take the growth in property tax off of a bunch of existing residential developments. You want brand new development for your increment, ideally. So that's really all I have. I wanted to get some feedback. This is kind of what I'm thinking, and you guys tell me what you want me to do. I'll do whatever you need. But just start developing those increment boundaries if you like that boundary of the project area, and start identifying project costs. With that, we can begin drafting a project plan. And then, of course, we plan to return in March to talk more about Griffin.
Excellent. Councilmember Hinkle.
I really like the expanded boundary that you came up with. I think it captures a lot of the opportunity to develop Highway 9 as that technology corridor coming in all the way up to Sooner Park? I can't remember the name, the Farzani's
Sooner Village.
Sooner Village. And then, yeah, taking the opportunity to capture the development that we know is gonna happen and the potential for things that could happen at the industrial area within CED right there. This is something that I feel like the east side, people of the east side have wanted for a long time, is something like this to come along, and I'm really excited that we're looking at it right now.
So we ponder also the bridge that Catherine described to really improve ingress, egress to Eagle Cliff and the neighborhoods Monterey to the east, especially in emergency situations. And the bridge, it's a pretty long span, and it's a pretty high grade to cover. I don't know how much engineering has been done in terms of the improvement or the ability to better manage maybe that part of Bishop's Creek. But you know, that public infrastructure opportunity is there, and it would probably be cost detrimental to further development, which means we probably wouldn't have another ability to really delve in and make improvements to that part of Bishop's Creek and achieve that bridge, which I think it would improve the circulation and the quality of life for all those residents pretty dramatically.
Didn't we get a price on that at about $10 million? Do I remember right?
20, over
20,
But
okay.
it's not just the bridge, it's extending Cedar Lane all the way to
That's
the west
right.
to Jenkins.
Right.
And then where it would connect to Jenkins is a topography
That's
issue.
right.
It dips way down, and so there'd have to be issues there. And then Jenkins would have to be improved all the way to Highway 9 to handle the additional traffic coming from the cliff. So altogether, it was in the 20+ million.
And you couldn't just divide it up among the future homeowners down there
No.
and call it good.
No, for
It,
sure.
yeah, it would just be cost prohibitive, so.
And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you think there's that amount of money increment available in this area?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, I think so. When you look at the development that's going to go on at that corner at Jenkins and Highway 9, and then the development further south off Classen,
Right.
if those come to fruition, that's going to generate a lot of increment. It'll depend on the percentages, of course, percentage of allocation from property tax and sales tax. But I do think that's possible.
Do you know if the Liberty Outdoors, the RV park down there is in that boundary? I couldn't really tell from the photos.
I couldn't tell from pulling up the parcels on the assessor's website, it looks like it's part of
Okay.
the Armstrong PUD, but I don't think that's correct.
I think it's separate.
Stop.
The neighboring.
Let's see.
I just asked because it's another approved project that is coming online. I think it'd be a great
Yeah,
tribute to this.
there.
So it is in there?
Excellent. Refresh my memory, we can adopt a project plan and a boundary and all that, but not start the clock yet?
Right,
So basically wait until Target and these other massive projects come online and
yeah.
kick it off the
Yeah,
day.
so then your increment district is starting, you know, at staggered times depending on when you're ready for that. And that's what we talked about with Griffin, especially because that one's gonna be a little delayed before you see money coming in on Griffin itself.
Mr. Francisco had a,
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, and I'm kind of getting into your policy area here, but from the general fund sales tax perspective, I'm a bit troubled by this concept of trying to capture development that you know is going to happen anyway. That is contrary to the concept of a TIF, which is to encourage development where it would not otherwise occur, except for the TIF, you know, spurring it. I'm not so sure that we want to apportion sales tax in an area that is gonna develop anyway. And just keep that in mind in your consideration, but I'm just, you know, I'm a bit troubled by that whole concept.
Mr. Francisco is the guy that tracks our sales tax intimately.
And that, just as a point of clarification, not to, but that was part of the reason why the enterprise zone fit into this project, was so that we could, I mean, we understand development's gonna happen here, but it's not blighted like what a TIF would be, but we could use it for other purposes if it were.
Yeah, and you definitely wanna do things to encourage additional development and the bridge and other things like that are certainly projects that could do that. But you also have to have some source of revenue where it's just sitting there. So it is a balancing act and it is a policy question. And we wanna be very careful with that, particularly as it comes to protecting the city's general fund.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you saying that.
Could be used too for making up a shortfall on 36th and Cedar Lane intersection. It's a voter-approved bond project, but it's a 20 million
Mhm.
project that
It
may
does-
not get federal funds, and it's gonna
Yeah.
be really hard, just like 36th Avenue, to try to get done. So that could be maybe one way that, since that's in the area. But I mean, I agree with the concerns about Anthony has about committing things, and I don't think I would wanna see 100%
Oh, no, I don't think so either.
commitment on any of these, but, you know, capturing,
Just enough to spur it.
yeah, and that we could put towards some of these infrastructure projects.
Yeah, I think, Catherine, I think your approach is spot on. Let's figure out what potential projects are, what the costs of those projects are, and then back in the equation from there to how much we would need to connect and collect an increment. I think that's logical. Cause yeah, I agree. We don't need to just create a district just to create a district. If it's gonna go fund things that we've identified as priorities, that's a different story, but, just to have another 100.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions? Thank you for making the time and providing us with that update.
Yeah.
Back in March.
Just so we remember, a couple sessions ago in Goals and Objective, Council says, you know, we need the Tax Increment Financing District Master Plan. And lo and behold, this is fascinating and so valuable to have these conversations, keeping Mr. Francisco's concerns on the forefront. Council puts those big ideas on the board and we'll get us there.
I think this is how we build more buy-in from the public to support these. And maybe that can help turn the sentiment about TIFs being a 3-letter, 4-letter word
I agree.
into being a positive, because we've all talked about that we have successful ones. Center City was approved unanimously by council a few years ago. There was no public protest to it. It's all property tax based, and it's only for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's really to respond to a demand, or things were being redeveloped in the area, and we realized we couldn't keep up with infrastructure needs to support all that new development. And so, Campus Corner was real successful, and in ways, the UNP TIF, like we said, is financially generates a lot of revenue, it brings in a lot of visitors. You know, twice as much as 19th Street and more, but, you know, there's, you gotta get
With
public
half the
to,
traffic.
yeah, we need to get the public to buy into it. I think having a comprehensive plan that really lays out, these are the areas, we have an idea what we wanna do and how we wanna do it, and, you know, I think that really helps get people on board.
No, I completely agree. I've always had that same mentality that this shows we're thinking about everybody. This is not just one section of town, but we're really trying to check boxes and everywhere.
And the east side has needed something for
Absolutely.
a long
And the
time.
Perfect Swing does present an interesting challenge because it is a high-profile piece of property. If it were vacant, I would say it would be a big candidate to be developed, probably. But I could see it being a hindrance if somebody's like, I'm gonna have to clear all that concrete out of there, I'm gonna have to tear everything down.
Mhm.
So maybe it's not as attractive because of that and the cost associated.
And even though sewer and water are kind of close by, when you think about what the circulation may look like on a 29-acre site, and is there water and sewer like ballpark close to where you need it? But you could have a half a mile worth of sewer line and water line infrastructure just to support whatever might eventually get developed.
I agree with that.
It's not gonna be Norman High School East, okay? You guys have told me that like 5 times.
You
Unless they
really
try
need
to
a
share
willing
it.
seller.
Most recently told me.
That's right. Well, thank you, Ms. Walker. I appreciate you, as always.
Norman High South.
TIF district coming to an enterprise zone near you.
All right, item number 2 is a discussion regarding the creation of a pre-approved design catalog for construction. Essentially, these would be pre-approved building plans for residential. So I think we have another staff presentation. I'll have to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Hoggett.
Okay, Anais is gonna probably step in, and she did a lot of this research for us, so we were just talking, I think we've been talking about pattern zoning or these pre-approved building plans since like 2021.
Size of his seat.
Ish, yeah. So, more cities have been trying it. We've had some time to kind of learn lessons from some other people. So we'll see what happens, I guess. But this is one of the projects that we put in our pro housing grant that we were awarded the funds. You'll see on your agenda on
Yep.
Tuesday.
Love
So, okay. So for those of you who might not know, pre-approved plans are building plans that have been pre-reviewed for building code and for fire kind of issues, but they would still require a site plan and a foundation plan. So they're not exactly something you could just come in and one day say, here's the plans, I'm ready, I'm leaving. There is a little bit more to be done, but it's still a start. They're designed and available for any resident of Norman. Most cities kind of designate them by a zone, so that's kind of where the pattern zone part comes from. So maybe in one area we have a certain architectural type, in a different area a different one. And then we are hoping that there would be low to no cost for users. That's something that would come into discussion down the road. So some benefits, it can increase the missing middle housing types. So that could be from duplexes to 8 units. They are very context sensitive, so different parts of town they can fit in without being a monster that the neighbors don't love. And there is a reduction of friction between the builder and our codes. Some challenges, if we do this, there is the risk that people never use it. So we could spend a couple $100,000 on this and have no takers, because it would be totally voluntary. Developers do have to consider a financial risk in a new kind of design, a new project. And review time for residential permits right now is currently about 72 hours average. So expediting permit times is not something we are really struggling with at this time. So it might not be the biggest thing to consider when looking at a successful program here in Norman. So we went to a session in Fayetteville at a planning conference, and the guys who kind of started this whole idea in the planning world, kept talking about how this is a housing supply tool. It is not an affordability tool. So it can help provide more units at a lower cost to residents or developers, but it doesn't make them affordable housing units, and it doesn't change the cost of construction for a new product.
Councilman Holman.
Could lower the cost of designing a place though, right?
Yes, so
There could be some, maybe not, I agree, this won't make something affordable, but
yes.
maybe it reduces the overall costs a little.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have to work necessarily like with a fire engineer on firewalls and all of that, or an architect, but they do still have to build it.
Right.
So. Okay, so we did a couple of case studies. I won't spend a whole lot of time going over all of them, but one thing we have noticed is that it's best for a city to go in with one goal in mind, or a few goals, but this isn't really something we go in and we just say, oh, we just want some designs. It needs to be to help solve a problem. Claremore, Oklahoma has had this in place for, how long do you think? 5 years-ish. So they did one round where they had, I wanna say they told us like 8 typologies, so 8 different kinds of housing. They're going into 2.0 and they're gonna have 29 different typologies. So they have had success with this program. They did have an area of town where a tornado went through and demolished. So they had these vacant lots that they wanted to be sure developed the way the community wanted. So they were specifically looking for that. They have a new unified development code that called for the development of this pattern book. And they are very specific about which design can be used in which part of town. And then we have had a little bit of trouble getting a hold of them to get some updated information, but they have had great success with this. So one thing that they pointed out in a session we went to was this construction cost. Just kind of showing that it's not that much less expensive for the development, but as you have more units, you know, you're kind of supply and demand, so you're helping with affordability in that way. Bryan, Texas has, when do you think they started?
Yeah, at about the same time, I think, it was about 21 or so, and they've been doing it for a little bit.
They have had, they just can't get people to bite. I don't know if their designs are not great or
It's
are
in a
not
suburban,
desired,
it's in a
but
very suburban area,
yeah, so it's,
so it's not like close to the downtown, or,
um,
then College Station doesn't have a downtown, so,
Right.
you know, it's just out there.
so I think they've just, people haven't seen the benefit of it there. But they do have a program. And then Fayetteville, they're developing there, so they haven't actually started it yet. But they are trying to, they kind of struggle with some of the same issues that Norman does in the core area of people coming in and redeveloping at a scale that doesn't match surrounding areas. And they also are trying to kind of lower their barriers for development in general. So they are doing a 3-year pilot program. And they did have some design principles that they followed, which I think are a lot of the same things that most places that are doing this probably have. And then they already have a wait list for when their plans go live, which is awesome. So I think it is gaining popularity if it's done correctly. Do you have anything to add about Fayetteville?
Well, I think she pointed out that they really had buy-in early on from developers and from the neighborhood, and some neighborhood people who were interested in on that wait list.
Oh, okay. Did you guys hear on East? Okay. So, a lesson learned there would be we need to make sure we're involving stakeholders from the beginning, which is always our goal, so.
Well, and to that point, I remember we talked about this several years ago. The chamber was very interested in the program. They were very willing to champion the idea. Obviously, it was very infant at the time. It wasn't really fleshed out, but in concept, I think everybody was really intrigued by the promise.
It's a very interesting concept. So Spokane is kind of an interesting example. Obviously the West Coast is kind of having a supply crisis. So they went down the whole trail of developing this program, got the designs from an architect that ended up not meeting their building codes, so, which is another lesson learned, make sure we're meeting building code. So they actually ended up just doing a zoning overhaul. They have a program, Building Opportunity for Housing. So they have changed their zoning code to allow for more of the missing middle housing types, which I do find really interesting. It's kind of hard to see this example, but they've adjusted setbacks and they allow for, maybe you have the 20-foot setback, but you can do a covered porch within that up to 6 feet, or and they've done it by type. So they have a helpful sheet for duplexes, triplex, quadplex, and they have had
Success, yeah.
great success with this. So just some takeaways. They are a supply tool, not an affordability tool, so I just want to make sure we don't get it out there that we're supplying units for people or whatever. This is a code issue. And we do want to make sure when we get to this part of our programming that we have a stakeholder group that is on board and that can help provide feedback to make sure we actually have people using these at the end. And I think we'll come back, or we can discuss it now, to kind of figure out what problem we're trying to solve with this, to make sure that we're programming the money most efficiently, the way the community wants, you guys want. So just to kind of show some next step with our pro-housing monies. So we were awarded $1 million. This project, we have slated for 200 to 50-ish of that. We're hoping to get our zoning code and subdivision regulation update underway with the parking study and have that pretty much very close to completion before we start this, because there could be some problems with development that we're solving with our zoning. And we want to make sure that the plans that we get work for the zoning that we are implementing, so we don't end up with conflicting projects. So we're hoping, assuming everything goes to schedule, it goes to plan, that we have these pre-approved plans with if we end up doing the pattern zoning piece as well, in place and available for use, so to you guys for voting, early to mid 2027.
So council,
Sounds far away, but it's not.
When you remember the conversation we had, our think tank, our elected officials, this conversation starts along with a dozen other conversations. We need to update the comprehensive land use plan. We want it to be all encompassing, all of our master plan documents to be updated so we have synergy. And all of that's underway. Our initial recognition is, boy, we really need to update zoning or we can approach it differently. Our initial assumption was we'll include that in next year's budget. It's just hard to write a check for all of those pieces all at once. But things you put on the board are things that we work on, and we never know where the next project funding is gonna come from. And here comes this program. And oh my gosh, what a bunch of problems we just solved. The challenge of now all of this work doesn't have to compete against other capital needs the council will review during budget development. Our ability to accelerate that, we can go faster than we were gonna be able to go if we had to wait until next year's budget to start the effort. And as comprehensive as that effort will be, this fits into it beautifully. Council's been tackling the challenges raised by, development in Core Norman through Center City Form-Based Code and reducing those setbacks to get the look and the walkability and the feel council wanted. And oh my gosh, the development community recognizes the value, and it's absolutely happening. So council's been successful in adding pieces. I think by the time we walk ourselves through this process with that pro grant, hopefully that's an effort. I bet you nobody else could tackle an effort of that magnitude without completely just bleeding out our capital budget for the next 5 years straight. It's tiring. These ladies are working, all our engineering troops, everybody's in, but they're all in. We believe in what we're gonna wind up with at the end of this. And when we looked at what some of those other cities have done and what pieces they approached, when Spokane says, yep, we think what we need to do is redo our zoning ordinance to accomplish all, well, son of a gun, we're gonna be working on that too. So this is really exciting, and we appreciate your willingness to put it out there on the table. The pace of local government sometimes is painfully slow, but recognize we seem to wind up in pretty good places. Like this would have been terrible if we'd have done all this work, spent all of general fund capital money, and then there's an award of a pro grant and we wish we didn't spend all that. We can't reimburse ourselves with it. And sometimes we get lucky, and we're feeling really lucky right now with this whole effort.
No, I agree. Great work on staff's part for you just securing this grant. And I've got a couple comments, but I'm gonna let Councilmember Dixon go first.
I mean, 100% to that. Great job on the grant. What all have we done so far for the stakeholder buy-in?
So we haven't really
Neighborhoods,
done,
builders.
we haven't really done anything yet, cause we were waiting to see how we were gonna fund this and where it was gonna fall in, kind of as a puzzle piece in our process. But it's all starting to come together, so I think we're probably still a year away, I would think, from really discussing who's gonna be involved with what piece.
That RFP for the consultant teams we'll bring in for this pro-grant program. One of the things we highlight is in your response to this RFP, please describe to us that community buy-in approach. How many public meetings will we have? Where will you go find people to get their input? You can say, we're gonna have a meeting down at City Hall and nobody shows up. That doesn't mean the public isn't interested. We need to go where the public is. So that community input, community outreach piece will be a heavily weighted factor in the consulting groups we recommend selecting for the task.
And one thing we learned from Claremore, or that I guess I hadn't thought about, maybe this is not news to anybody else, but they included their local bankers, which I mean probably makes sense to the development community, but a lot of these projects are things that they're just not used to financing because it seems risky because people aren't doing it right now. So getting them on board to kind of talk about what that looks like. That's a world I don't live in, so I don't know that side, but. So-
Well, and I think that's a great segue into what I was gonna say, in that I think this is two or three different lanes. Obviously, you've got, vacant lots where this could go, virgin ground. You've got infill lots where you've got buildings on both sides and you're trying to stick something in. But I think the most potential for this program is our new ADU ordinance and just getting a set of pre-approved ADUs that, if you turn it this way, you can fit on this lot, if you turn it this way, you can fit it on a different lot. Just really narrowing the focus to just ADUs, because, fall 2027, it hurts, I get it, I'm
It
not,
seems far away,
it
we just
does.
wanna make sure we're
we just have
utilizing it the best way.
such a pain with housing today, and just being able to start attacking the problem today. I just know in 2.5 years, it's gonna be even more of a problem.
So let us maybe fold that into our RFP. In terms of the work council's done to provide for, to legalize accessory dwelling units available in every residential zone, that we may be able to work with that, because your priorities are our priorities. And if the priority is, hey, consultants, here's what we're planning and here's what we would like to see, and maybe our pilot project that goes first, it's ADUs. How many different footprints can you make with 650 square feet? Not can't get too wild and crazy on the design. We could potentially go fast and get some immediate feedback. So yeah, let us craft
Okay.
that RFP with that goal in mind.
Well, and when I originally thought about this idea, I wasn't envisioning an RFP with a consultant and all that. I was thinking we would just do an open call for designs. Basically, you just solicit designs from the architecture community, see what you get. Maybe even include a royalty fee, so that they get paid at some point. But obviously, I don't know I don't know what the financing structure looks on something like that, if the grant was even, if you could even use it for something like that, but you know, instead of hiring a big consultant to come in and lay out this 100-page plan on what we need to do, it's just, we know what we need to do, and that's get plans.
So, let us,
Not to say a consultant couldn't lead the charge.
what if, that call for such a request, and could the reward, if somebody pulls that plan, here's your,
Yeah.
here's your fee.
Yeah.
If nobody pulls the plan, if nobody buys your record, you don't get paid as an artist. If somebody buys your record,
That way,
you
we're
get
not,
paid as an
we're not
artist.
spending money on plans that we fear might not get used.
It's another way to get it out there too, if you make it kinda like a,
Consignment.
not watery, but
Well, and you know, this is gonna sound self-serving, but it's not. I don't wanna take work away from local architects. You know, that's not the goal of
no,
this.
we've talked about that. Yeah, we
And
wanted
so
to
giving
do
them the
that.
opportunity, again, if it's a consultant, an outside consultant that comes in and says, here's your plans, we've really taken a lot of work off the table for our local design professionals. And
Who know the neighborhoods.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
and know our current codes, cause it
Exactly.
seems to be an issue across the country, they hire whomever.
Yeah.
And maybe they, like one, I don't remember where, but they didn't take into account snow loads, somewhere up north where it snows a
Right.
ton. And so they
Kind of a
couldn't
thing.
use,
Well, here's the caveat. In Oklahoma, you don't have to be a licensed architect to design houses. So
so
make
stuff
that
like
part,
that
make that
will,
part of the requirement that
Yeah.
you've gotta put an architectural stamp on there. I mean,
Here I go.
hey, I've had it. That liability insurance is not cheap.
Well, you know, the thought of what Claremore, you know, what was the environment under which they said we should go do this. It didn't occur to me, but when you think about this tornado wipes out blocks. We're seeing fires in California and hurricanes in North Carolina, and properties are gone. What would be the fastest way to help those homeowners get back into a home, grab your plans and run? Maybe just in terms of disaster preparedness, this is a direction communities should go. And we already have designs maybe that fit your neighborhood. That could be
Dearborn
huge.
has
I
one
agree.
that's like a convertible
Yeah.
design, so you could do single family or turn it into like a horizontal or vertical duplex, sorry.
Yeah, I've even seen like you stack them for a garage apartment, you can do, it's the modular, flexibility, I guess for lack of a word. You know, that's what's so impactful about this. You get one square, how many different ways can you do the one square kind of thing?
Or maybe owner A wants to do single family, but the next person wants to rent out a unit
Right.
or whatever, so
Right.
it's,
Well, and the reason I said that conversation about the banks makes so much sense is because ADUs, again, were not only a way to get people into home ownership cheaply, but also a way to build generational wealth and a way to, take your existing property and get more efficiency out of it. I think there's definitely room for the bankers in this conversation because there's a lot of investment potential.
Mr. Banker, do all y'all like do coffee once a month and talk bank guy stuff? Is that a thing? Do you have an association?
I think it's probably more like they get together and have coffee and talk about each other once a month.
Well, what a great topic.
No, there's, I know that, most bankers, especially in Norman, we're ripe with community bankers, and so they're very focused on this kind of stuff, and I think they would be excellent. There would be a clamoring to be a good partner on this project from several of our institutions here in Norman.
Wonderful.
It's a project that checks a lot of boxes.
Mhm.
we just wanna make sure we get it right, so people are using it.
We succeed.
I'd love to be at the end of everything and there's a wait list. I just think that's awesome.
But to potentially be able to save money and time on design and save money and time on city process. So if you have to come through, it's a 3-month process from
For rezoning,
to apply and then pre-development and planning commission, city council,
yeah,
2
that might
hearings.
be-
So if you're paying Mr. Rieger that entire 3 months, which I know he doesn't wanna lose business to.
If you're in a hotel because your house is gone for 3 months.
Right.
But, for a big giant development like we talked about, someone may need to hire Mr. Rieger for that, but like if somebody wants to build an ADU, I don't think they should have to do that. And then that just makes it more expensive for them to build the thing and then the rent's gonna be higher. And
We're hoping it maybe creates I don't know how to phrase it, but like developers might be more willing to have a neighborhood that has some duplexes sprinkled in, even new construction kind of stuff, just showing it can be done.
Well, the last 2 or maybe even 3 ideal homes developments that came through. They had ADUs baked into the zoning from the PUD from the very beginning, so.
And even that thought of, every corner lot in a new subdivision could be a duplex, and you could have a driveway approach on each side of the block, and the neighbors wouldn't even notice, but yeah, you're gaining density.
Well, and that's, again, you just hit the nail on the head. The neighbors would never notice because all these look like single-family houses. Even if it's a duplex or a triplex or a garage apartment, feels, looks, sounds like a duck.
It just feels like a way to clear out the obstacles to kind of stop us from getting outpaced by the need.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to slow that gap.
I mean, it's incremental development to a T, just the next smallest step. It's just trying to get more supply out there, so.
Love it.
I know some people joined for this conversation in the crowd. Did anybody have anything you want to contribute? Mr. Shrink or anybody?
I'll just say, it's the easy button. A lot of people are scared. They don't want to come deal with the city. They don't want to go through that process, and this could be a great way to hit the easy button, get some housing.
I agree.
Because Laura's very scary. She intimidating.
That's why she's at that end of the table.
So we will look at, like Daryl was saying, kind of moving it up, but I do wanna just make sure that we have our zoning, like I just don't wanna get some designs that don't work.
Yeah.
With updated zoning,
I think
or like
getting,
you were saying, just making it where they don't have to come in and rezone, maybe the zoning is updated where they can already have this.
I think including the licensing caveat and also make them include foundations. I think that should be part of it.
Is that not site specific?
For a house, for a single story house, they're all, the soil.
They should be building the house on a level part, even if they had to infill dirt or something like that.
Yeah, you could make it to where a geotech or something was required, but then you're just adding costs to the property. I don't know, that's something that probably won't flush out. That's a
So
good
site
point.
plan and like grading plans, I guess?
Grading plans, yeah, site plan is just really how the water drains around the site plan. It's a 650 square foot house, so it's gonna be,
Even the
gonna go
thought
where it
of
can go,
the tools that we make available to the public. And I think we do an incredible job, like Dr. Joyce Green's GIS system, what you can find about property in Norman from the website. Is there a way where somebody could zoom it, go to our website, click a button for software they helped us pay for, and zero in on, hey, that's my lot right there, and kind of, almost a scaled, push the button and print that, now I can draw what I'm thinking on this scaled.
absolutely. So, the original idea behind the pattern zoning program was exactly that. You would go to a city website, you'd find your lot, and then you'd click on it and say, you can build plan 1, 7, 9, 15, and those are all pre-approved. And, you click the button, you pay your money, you get your permit and your building plans right there for that lot. It already had like predetermined site plans because it knew which houses could fit on that lot, and so it just.
Yep.
Obviously, it's out above my pay grade a little bit, how to put something like that together.
We got
right?
Dr. Joyce,
Yeah.
we got people who, I think they could,
That's the zoning piece of it. We're talking about pattern zoning, that's the zone. But, I think just getting a pattern book, again, taking the next smallest step, if we could just get the book and then maybe figure out the zone piece afterwards. Because to me, the zone is the ADU. Our zone is a backyard cottage.
Yep.
Whatever that looks like, so, okay. All right, I think I beat that horse to death, so, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.